right? It's going to level the playing field. But if we don't intentionally again think about the digital divide, so then people who don't have access are going to lose out yet again. So it's really something to.
Welcome everyone. I'm Hadia Shaukat, Engagement Manager at Academos. We are back with our podcast series. With me, I have Dr. Farah. Dr. Farah has been working in the development sector for the last 10 years. She is Director at the Office of Inclusion and Accessibility at LUMS. She is also currently teaching at the School of Education at LUMS. Her expertise lies in data analysis, monitoring and evaluation, data sciences, and interdisciplinary research. She has also worked as a consultant with the World Bank. Today जो हमारा podcast है, the theme for that is basically monitoring and evaluation and data-driven decision making in Pakistan, particularly focusing in the development sector and the education space. So Dr. Farah, hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction.
I'm again going to ask you to introduce yourself because your professional background has been so interesting. You started off with engineering and data sciences, and then eventually you made a shift towards education and M&E. So would you like to talk a little bit about the transition and how has the experience been?
Of course. So my first profession was actually not data science, it was wireless communication. So I'm an engineer in communication. And then during my PhD research, I switched to machine learning. And my machine learning applications were in the domain of education. A lot of this was driven by my own sort of experience. As a woman in STEM, I saw a lot of gender disparity. Pakistan के अंदर भी engineering classroom के अंदर you have a very few number of women and predominantly it's men. In the US also gender disparity persists, but in addition to that, you also see disparities along the lines of race and I've always been very interested in education because education for me really carries a lot of value in how you can build up your life. So during my dissertation, I started doing research on developing machine learning tools for the space of education. And that really became a very interesting space for me to be in, and that ultimately sort of caused my transition from the core engineering space into the education space. And working with education has been just very rewarding. And it's always very interesting to have a multidisciplinary focus, which I think is really valuable for everything, but particularly when you work in social domains.
Yeah. So, you're talking about education sector and, particularly the development sector. What do you feel like, what are some of the biggest challenges that Pakistan is faced with within the education sector and also the larger development sector over the past couple of years?
Yeah, so I think that's a sad question to ask. And there's a proliferation of media that talks about poor learning outcomes for students, talks about having now this largest population of out-of-school children. So Pakistan does have, in a very simplistic way, a twin crisis when it comes to education. So one is that of access. Children are not able to access education, and the second is that even if they are in school, their learning outcomes are really poor. And that is a very massive challenge given sort of the scale of our out-of-school children population. So the current estimates at about 26 million. This is a massive, massive number. And we can see that when these children grow up, our youth in the labor force, so we can see how long-term it will impact the productivity of our labor force.
Definitely. I see that there are a lot of projects, government projects, donor-funded projects out there in the development sector. And you have worked with a lot of these projects yourselves. So while working on these projects, what do you feel are some of the challenges that you have faced, especially in terms of funding, generating funding for all of these projects? पाकिस्तान में सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन ये आता है जब आप डेवलपमेंट सेक्टर की बात कर रहे हो एंड फंडिंग की बात कर रहे हो कि ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं है एंड अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं है. So how all of these things are being ensured in all of these development related projects within Pakistan?
So that's also a very interesting question. One of the things that I think we should focus on is the fact that जब हम projects की interventions की बात करते हैं तो हम बात कर रहे होते हैं activities की, right? The activities that we plan, the activities that we fund, the activities that we do. What we unfortunately are not paying a lot of attention to are the intended outcomes of those activities, right? So we could, in a lot of cases, there's a fairly rigorous monitoring process for the activities themselves. So you track, okay, how much money is being spent, how much budget is being utilized, is the activity actually happening? But really, the core purpose of that intervention is not to do an activity, right? हम उस activity के ज़रिए कुछ outcomes achieve करने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं. And what we really need to think about is shifting our focus to measuring those results. Results-based management or results-based decision-making के ऊपर focus है, but this is a space where we need to be more intentional about. We really need to, if you think about accountability, right? The accountability shouldn't be for doing an intervention. The accountability should be for the results that the intervention is supposed to achieve. And that is, I think, where we need to do more work. And really, what we need to tie our funding to is outcomes, right? We shouldn't tie our funding solely to the activity that we're doing, but think about कि इस activity को करके, इन funds को spend करके, particularly क्योंकि ये public money है, do we achieve the outcomes that we need to or not? And historically, आपकी जितनी interventions हैं, there has been some progress, but overall, if you look at the landscape of education in the country, you see there's still a lot that we need to do.
So, आजकल एक hot topic ये है कि accessibility of the internet, right? And also we are facing a lot of internet-related challenges. So my question regarding that is, given okay, we're talking about interventions and development-related projects. So how do you feel that all of this internet blockage and internet access issues are going to affect the development sector and the larger education sector in the long run? Because I also have been working on some of these projects, so I feel like when you were talking about M&E, and a lot of that is based on monitoring and evaluation, and then when you do not have access to internet and all of these accessibility issues, so that does kind of have an impact.
It has a very big impact. So interestingly, I had the opportunity to go to NTNU in Norway. And one of the things they said was that we now consider internet access a basic human right. Right? Which is very interesting because if you look at the way we have developed in the past 2 decades, internet has become a necessity for a lot of us. और जब उसके अंदर disruption आती है तो it impacts, of course, a lot of aspects of our life, right? The way we communicate, the way we track things, the way even that we learn. So, I mean, in terms of research, it's an interesting question to explore what is going to be the long-term impact of it, but we can definitely see that internet disruptions have a fairly negative impact, right, on student learning, on learning as a whole, particularly when technology comes in. Now, when you couple internet disruptions with actual disruptions with in-person learning, जो कि which have happened कि small की वजह से, for example, school बंद हो गए, तो फिर आप ऑनलाइन लर्निंग पे शिफ्ट होंगे, बट अगर आपका इंटरनेट ही नहीं चल रहा तो इवन स्टूडेंट्स who could access online learning, they can't access it. So it's a fairly multifaceted problem which has a lot of implications for our learning.
And also I feel like when you're talking about data-driven decision making, so if you're not getting access to data and data collection in itself becomes a really big challenge when there are issues like internet and all that. So can you just from your personal experience share some examples of policy-related decisions which have been based out of data and how data is widely used within the larger public policy?
So I'm going to talk specifically about Pakistan. So I know, having worked with the system in Punjab, having worked with the system in KP, there is a sizable amount of data that is collected. There's quite a large machinery around it as well in terms of HR, in terms of online technical systems, so people do collect a lot of data. Now, how effectively they can use the data is a really interesting question. And really just volume के साथ हम data collect करते हैं, हम उसको उस तरह इस्तेमाल नहीं करते. But it is encouraging to see that recently there has been a little bit of shift towards using data for policy making, for evidence-informed decision making. And one of the first crucial steps that we really need to think about is that data in its raw form is really not going to help much, right? So you really need to think about synthesizing that into useful information, to useful evidence. So one such example is that आपकी जो annual development planning होती है, which is with the school education department, every year it plans, okay, what's going to happen in terms of resource allocation next year, is now more increasingly using the data that is collected annually from the schools. So that's a broad example. A more specific example is that Punjab mein public schools mein every public school gets what is called a non-salary budget. Right, so that budget is transferred to the school. The way the allocation of that budget is calculated is based on indicators from the school. So, for example, the size of the school in terms of enrollment, whether the school has an ECE classroom or not. So that is a really great example of how data is not just informing policy, but also informing implementation. But again, we have some work to do because we collect a lot more data than what we use.
Yeah, so why do you think, data तो हम बहुत collect कर रहे हैं, like you mentioned, but we are not actually utilizing it to the extent जितना वो होना चाहिए effectively. So why do you think, what is stopping us?
From using the data?
Yeah, that's my
We
question.
have it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting question as well. और इसके बहुत सारे, I feel it's an interplay of factors. So one of the factors is that data in some ways has become synonymous with accountability, right? And not with a positive connotation, but with a negative connotation. So there isn't a lot of incentives for people who are making the decisions to use the data if there is a pervasive fear that this will lead to negative outcomes for them.
Yeah.
So what needs to shift, right, beyond collecting the data is we really need to encourage a culture that incentivizes data use,
Yeah.
right? If using data is good for you, is good for you demonstrating your performance, then you will be much more inclined to use the data. But if using data can get you into trouble, or your data coming to light can get you into trouble, then you don't have the incentive to use the data.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. The other reason I feel, and I've seen this play out, is the fact that data, particularly just scale पर हम उसको इकट्ठा करते हैं, can be intimidating, right?
Yeah.
So not everybody is a data scientist, not everybody has those skills, fair enough. What really needs to happen is कि जो data हम collect करें, the massive amount of raw data that we have, उसको again, like I said before, we need to synthesize it into usable evidence.
Yeah.
And that means something that is appropriate for the different types of users or consumers of the data. So जो उनको अपने काम के लिए ज़रूरत है, उस form में data needs to be presented. And that is something again which we need to work on.
So, Dr. Farah, I know that I'm going to digress, a little bit from what we're talking about because, since you're here and, we both are like women. So, I just wanted to ask, given your experience and you have worked in, STEM, you worked in public policy and, you have your background from data sciences and engineering as well. So, how difficult, and if difficult, obviously, you feel like the space has been for, a female, and what are some of the challenges you feel that you have faced over time, particularly in Pakistan?
So I think that's a very thought-provoking question for me. So I'll start with a small anecdote of what happened to me. So मैंने जब अपनी पहली internship की, I was in college just for undergrad में. So I went and worked for a telecommunication company. I got there, the manager explained, this XYZ is your role. And once he stopped explaining, he said, by the way, इस building के अंदर औरतों के लिए washroom नहीं है. होता था पहले, लेकिन हमने convert किया था कि building में औरतें नहीं है. So if you want to use the restroom, so साथ वाली building में there's a restroom that you can use. And this really was the experience. So there were very few women in our cohort of engineering. And then among our faculty also, we didn't have any women who were senior faculty members. As a matter of fact, we just had the one faculty member who taught us who was a woman. So what it does is that there is nobody within your profession that you can look up to as being senior, right? Yeah. And so that really sort of also shapes your aspirations. But what it also does is if people are not intentionally working on creating an inclusive space for you, you also don't feel a sense of belonging, right? आपकी जो profession के साथ affiliation बनती है, I belong in this space, that doesn't sort of develop. And this was true in Pakistan, and many years later, the movie Hidden Figures came out. This was point I was in the US, and so for people who don't know, Hidden Figures is about the women who were part of the scientific teams working in the acting. And there was a scene in which a woman had to walk outside and find a washroom in another building, and I felt so seen at that point, and I realized that this is not just a me problem. So overall, when there's a lack of people like you that you can identify with in a profession, in senior levels of leadership, तो होता ये है कि एक तो you don't aspire to that, right? Which happens a lot. So अगर आप STEM pipeline की बात करें, तो a lot of women, a lot of people from minorities don't even aspire to those careers, right? And दूसरा ये होता है कि you also don't have mentorship from people who understand your particular set of circumstances, right? So as we can see, कि women, when they are in the labor force, do have a slightly different set of circumstances than men do. Pakistan में खास तौर पे predominantly आपकी जो caregiving responsibility है, that falls on women, right? So of course their career trajectories are shaped by that. So that has continued to play a role, but also influences the way that I approach STEM, right? So I believe a lot in actively engaging in mentorship, in engaging with young people, particularly young women, as they're thinking about their careers. And I believe that that's really important for us to do, and again with a lot of intentionality.
Yeah. So I think that also kind of aligns with your current role as director for Office of Accessibility and Inclusion at LUM. So generally talking about accessibility and inclusion within the higher education institutions. What do you think is the way forward for us, and how we can work towards making our higher education institutions more inclusive for the larger audience that goes there on a daily basis, and what kind of accommodations are also required for given mental health is also like rising problem within the youngsters. So how do you think, and what is your role currently as a director at Office of Inclusion Accessibility and Arts, and what are you trying to do there?
So the higher education space has a very interesting nuance, right? अगर आप historically देखें over the past 200 years, this space was set up to cater to a certain type of demographic, right? And sort of by that design and by that legacy, it is really not very inclusive to other types of people.
Yeah.
But if you look at the demographic that actually goes to higher education, that has grown quite a lot. So one of the key challenges that I see stems from that legacy, right? What is the ethos? Who is the space designed for? Who should be participating in higher education? And rethinking that requires a level of unlearning and relearning, right? So at one point, you didn't have a lot of college-going population who were also full-time caregivers to their children, right? But now we see that demographic shift. For the longest time, आपकी जो mainstream universities थी, उसमें persons with disabilities were not included, right? Primarily, you had what we didn't have a space for them there, right? That point is also changing. So really thinking about the fact that हमारा demographic change हो रहा है, the people who go to the university, and then how do we then take this legacy model and then adapt it to make it work for everybody who's incoming. So some of the things that we do at LUMS, my office primarily at this point deals with two buckets. So one is gender. We really think about issues impacting inclusion when it comes to gender, right? And not just the gender itself, but the roles that are associated with that. And then in addition to that, we are looking at how best to support students with disabilities while not compromising on their learning outcomes. And this, of course, as you can imagine, is challenging. Now, globally, what is happening is that young people are becoming more anxious, right? And that manifests when they show up in academic learning spaces. So what worked 20 years ago might not work now, right? So this is where the rethinking is required. And this requires a lot of effort, right? Again, this is an active area for research globally, right? So it's not just that we're struggling in Pakistan, but globally this is an area where we're struggling. That is exciting as well. I mean, I'm hoping that we can come up with some innovative ideas and solutions for this. But again, a certain amount of unlearning and relearning is required.
So we're talking about all these divides. So I was listening to one of the panel discussions that you were recently a part of, and उसमें आपने बात की थी about the digital divide that exists within the education sector in Pakistan. So what do you think, पहले तो what are the reasons that this divide exists, and how can we try to bridge these gaps that exist within the education sector?
So I hope I'm not completely associated with divide. That's not like a great tagline. But digital divide, much like a lot of our other challenges, stems from historical marginalization and historical access to privilege, right? So there are certain people who have more resources at their disposal, and then even when it comes to access to digital resources, connectivity, they've been out there as well. And there are some groups historically which have been marginalized, so then when it comes to these tools, technologies, they lose out. So for example, women in Punjab are less likely to have digital access compared to men, often comparable socioeconomic status. And then, of course, socioeconomic status in itself is a very big determinant. And then where you are also plays a very big role. People in urban areas have more access to connectivity as compared to people in rural areas. And of course, geographically, across Pakistan, we also differ. The digital divide is fairly persistent, right? And the big fear is that in some ways technology is touted as being the great leveler, right? It's going to level the playing field.
Yeah.
But if we don't intentionally again think about the digital divide,
Yeah.
so then people who don't have access are going to lose out yet again.
Yes.
So it's really something to
So,
think
this
about.
kind of brings me to the fact that, and sometimes I do keep on thinking about it, कि इतना ज़्यादा, digital divide है जो already exist करता है, but then we keep on talking about, technology is the solution for everything, hectic, and, even taking, there have been a lot of initiatives recently as well where you're taking teacher training online as well. But then the reality is different somehow. So, when we're talking about educational technology or whether we're talking about, digitizing and revolutionizing the education system through it. So, do you actually feel like that's the solution that is required? I mean, there's no one answer to this, but like, I genuinely feel कि हम इतना focus कर रहे हैं उसके ऊपर, but do you think कि results उस तरह achieve हो रहे हैं या नहीं?
So the way I've thought about this for the longest time, and I still do think about it this way, is that technology is one tool, right? So आपका जो arsenal है, let's say for improving learning outcomes, या equitable access to education, उसमें technology is one of the tools. Technology can play a very important role, but it's not a magic bullet, right? ये नहीं होगा कि आप technology ले आएंगे तो आपका access का problem solve हो जाएगा, equity का problem solve हो जाएगा. We have to again be very intentional of the way in which we think about two things. So one is कि we think about, okay, who can actually access this intervention? अगर technology based intervention है, तो क्या हमारे जो students हैं, who come from affluent families, उनकी access, and students who don't come from very affluent families, उनकी access क्या ये बराबर है?
Yeah.
That's the first thing to think about. The second thing to think about is who is involved in the design of these technologies. Your stakeholders are your consumers, right? Education, edtech आप देखें तो आपके stakeholders, educators हैं और students हैं, right? So are all of these groups of students and teachers the privileged and the people who don't have access to that privilege, क्या वो सारे लोग शामिल हैं इस design में? And that is very important when we think about designing tools that work for everybody.
Yeah.
And until we think of those two things and really focus on them, it's just going to be more of the same. Technology will work for some people, but continue to not work for people who, again, have been historically marginalized.
Yeah, I think that does make a lot of sense. Moving, back to from where we started and talking about M&E, how do you think we can, enhance the quality of M&E monitoring and evaluation activities that are happening in Pakistan? Because I do feel like there are a lot of challenges, and I particularly myself have been associated with some of the projects. How do you think that the overall quality of the M&E services can be improved?
So I have an opinion, it's my opinion, does not reflect any group or agency that I work for. We have a lot of focus on monitoring, but we don't focus so much on evaluation, right? Evaluation again comes to taking what we collect in monitoring and synthesizing that and learning from it, right? So to improve the entire M&E chain, I think there are a few things we need to think about. पहली बात ये है कि we need to figure out कि अगर हम again data collect कर रहे हैं तो what's the best way of using that? What is the best way of learning from that? Because it is a cycle. So it's monitoring, evaluation, learning. So until you have the learning, there's really not much that you're going to get out of the process. The other key which ties in with this is कि अगर आप data सिर्फ collect करते और इस्तेमाल नहीं करते, तो there's no way to improve the quality and credibility of the data, right? So अगर आप data इस्तेमाल करना शुरू करेंगे, तो then the quality of it will improve. And then the third point is that we need to think about how my stakeholders come on in, right? And a lot of development sector, public sector initiatives, आपके stakeholders जो हैं, they are the public. Right? So for M&E to be robust, for it to function the way it is intended, it is important कि आपकी जो public है that engages with the process, right? And of course the contours of that can look different. But really thinking about, so for example, अगर आपको aggregate level पे, provincial level पे पता आपका data present होता है, and let's say the data isn't painting a correct picture, right? At the aggregate level, it's very difficult to identify that. But let's say you have some stakeholders from a particular area, when they see the data, they can really quickly identify that this doesn't match the reality on ground for them, right? And that also builds the credibility of the system. Again, these are not tools to force accountability or ramification, but really tools to learn and improve. So that mind shift in the way we think about it is really important, but also really, again, thinking about how and who do we benefit through this process. And again, we have made some progress in the area, but there's still some way to go when it comes to M&E in Pakistan as a whole.
Okay, so before we move on to our last question, I just wanted to ask you, data driven decision making के लिए हमने बात कर ली. There's need for it. There's need to effectively utilize data. But what can we do at the higher education level to produce graduates that are very, acquainted with data analytics techniques, how to read data, how to, do decision making using data. So I feel like वो भी एक थोड़ा सा lag है. Like whenever we are out looking for people with data skills, we also find that there is a lag as well, where a lot of people out there in the market are not very familiar with how to, collect data, how to utilize data, how to analyze data. So at the higher education system level, what do you feel like, what are the challenges and what are some of the gaps where we need to work on?
So from my experience teaching in higher education, and I've taught both in engineering and in education, the thing is that students who have not pursued quantitative fields, right? So students who are not in engineering, say, typically come with a certain amount of fear of math. Right? And that comes through their schooling, which is, in a sense, again, very unfortunate. But when they have this fear, and then their anxiety around these issues do prevent them, in cases, from actively engaging with the content. Now, having said that, there is a growing understanding that data science is a core skill, right? You don't need to be a machine learning scientist, but you do need to know some level of data understanding, data reading, data presentation. And one of the things that we can think about here is developing micro skills, right? So we can, instead of having them take a semester long course, give them the opportunity to engage with the content in perhaps a lower stakes setting, and provide them the opportunity to learn these skills, because they do come in handy. And generally, people with these skills do tend to fare better, just like you said, you look for certain skills, right? So there is the notion of, okay, if you are not comfortable taking a semester long for written course for this, then perhaps there should be some other opportunity for you to learn. So that's just one possible solution. And of course, a little bit of out of the box thinking can go a long way here.
So, moving to our conclusion, and thank you a lot. I think there are a lot of great insights that you provided us with today. But my very last question basically focuses on कि हम लोग बहुत बातें करते हैं कि ये challenges हैं, development sector हो गया, education हो गया, मतलब challenges are it, right? So for our listeners and for individuals, what do you think what we can do at our own level in order to address some of these challenges, either more accessible and equitable education से related है या other areas that fall under the development sector? So a lot of times we are looking towards the state or the policy level, and वहाँ से हमें solutions आएंगे, but at the individual level, what are some of the things that we can do to address some of these major challenges that Pakistan is faced with?
So I think individuals can do a sizable amount of work in this space. अगर हम inclusion की बात करते हैं, हम accessibility की बात करते हैं, तो really a lot of this conversation begins at home, right? आपके जो students होते हैं, for example, जब वो university में आते हैं, if they are not accustomed to, let's say, working with students who have a disability, तो उनके लिए higher space में भी मुश्किल होगा, right? So these conversations need to happen at the level of the household, right? These are all members of our community. We need to engage with them, right? Particularly, we have a fair amount of, again, coming back to the divide. Okay, we have certain households which have a sizable amount of privilege, but their higher education access में भी वो लोग आगे होते हैं, right? So then those are the families who need to really engage, within the household. Okay, we need to think about everybody as part of the community, right? So एक वो inclusion element है. The other element is, earlier I referred to mentorship, right? अगर आप इस position में हैं, you're in a particular career where you can go and mentor young people in your community, you should do that. And that, of course, serves a really good purpose. One, it builds social cohesion, but also it gives and builds more diversified career aspirations among young people. The other thing is, if you think about just education, right? So education may, particularly in smaller communities, there is some evidence to show कि जब आपकी community engage करती है
Yeah.
school के साथ, तो the learning outcomes improve, access improves, retention improves, right? So consider the fact that we might not all have the opportunity, but जिसको opportunity है, they should really consider engaging with the schools in their local community. And then, of course, there is the big accountability button that we all have, which is engaging with the democratic process.
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, development sector initiatives, public sector initiatives, it is happening with public money for the public.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, how does the public, express their approval and disapproval? Ultimately, this happens through the vote.
Yeah.
Right? So, when we engage, rigorously with the democratic process, we can really also affect change that way,
Yeah.
right? And then being aware, right? So, हमारे हर हल्के के अंदर, we have local politicians, we have people who run for the provincial assembly, for the national assembly. Do we know कि उनके manifestos क्या है?
Yeah.
Right? What is their manifesto when it comes to education? So the more engaged we become in the process, the more likely we are to affect change.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thought, and I think that's very insightful. Thank you so much, Dr. Farah, for joining us, for sharing your insights. I think development sector and the education sector in particular in Pakistan is obviously faced with a lot of challenges. But I think, like you mentioned, I really liked the way you talked about the awareness gap as well. Okay, as individuals, there's a lot of things that we are also not aware of. So a lot of self accountability and a lot of things have to come from our own end as well to cater to all the larger issues that Pakistan is faced with. But thank you so much, and lovely to have you here, and would love to have you back again on another day talking about some other divides, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Adia. I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation. Very happy to talk about more divides. It seems like that's what I'm associated with.
Thank you.
Thank you.